So I'm going to go through 3 sections. The first is a little bit about Zipcar, who we are, our brand. Our brand is very much the experience to us. In that, I'll talk about what our guiding principles are with experience design, and talk a little bit about the complexities of Zipcar, what's under the hood, what's behind the stage that we're dealing with on a daily basis on our quest to deliver delight. So that's section 1. Section 2, I'll jump into those 7 steps and take you through them with some high-level examples. And then section 3, I'll give one example of how we have applied those steps to a problem that we had in the customer experience. And then I think we'll open it up for questions. So again, our brand is really the experience. Zipcar is a car-sharing company. We enable simple urban living. We enable people to live in cities and not have to own a car. People share cars, and through that, they're able to save money and help their city improve the environment. The way it works is you rent cars by the hour or by the day, all gas, insurance, all those complex things that normally come with car ownership are all included. So again, we're trying to make something that's traditionally complex and kind of burdensome. If you own a car, there's a lot of work involved in it. We're trying to make it super, super simple for people. The business is very much, and the experience is very much self-serve. Very infrequently do you interact with humans when you're a member of Zipcar. You join online, you reserve using your mobile phone, you interact with the car, you swipe it and open the car, no one's around you, so you're never really dealing with any humans unless something goes wrong, which I'll talk to you about in a little while. But it's basically a self-serve business. And so when we think about delight, we need to be, when you're thinking about digital channels, you need to think very strategically about how are you going to delight when it's a digital channel. A little bit about the cars. One of the key elements of the value proposition is that we have cars for whatever trip type you want to take. If you need to go to Whole Foods for a couple of hours, take a hybrid. If you need to move your friend's couch across town, take a van. If you want to impress someone, take a BMW or an Audi. If you want to go to the beach and feel the wind in your hair, take a Mini or a Fiat convertible. So our cars are very much a part of the experience. They all have fun names. We give them personalities, basically. And again, what we're trying to do is make it so people don't have to own a car, and so they can rely on Zipcar for things that they would use a car for. So you can see if someone's using one of our cars for their post-wedding car, we need to make sure that that experience is excellent, delightful, and really, really consistent and special. So that was a little bit about Zipcar, who we are. A little bit about our guiding principles from a company standpoint and from an experience design standpoint. We're lucky enough, I think, to have core values as a company that we actually use. I know a lot of companies have core values. They're on the website. No one ever looks at them. But in our case, we actually try to live by them and took a lot of time to design the core values. And so some of them play very directly into my team's remit, such as keeping it simple. Again, this is a complex business to deliver, complex experience to deliver, but we want it to be super simple and elegant and fun. Obsess about the member experience. This is something that everyone in the company is empowered to do. Even though my title has experience in it, the entire company knows that they're part of delivering the experience. And on that note, so within my team, the guiding principle around obsessing about the member experience is that we believe that great experiences don't just happen. You actually need to design them. If you actually take the time to design them, then good stuff is going to happen. Good stuff meaning you'll build the number of people who are talking about you positively as promoters. You'll have better loyalty and engagement, so when people face alternatives with your competitors, they'll stay with you, and you have a good strategic chance at increasing lifetime value. So I thought this was just an important component to set the stage with regards to our guiding principles around experience design. A component of this session is complexity. Many of our businesses are complex. Zipcar on day one was complex, and let me tell you why. There are a few different reasons. Number one, people. So our customers add to the complexity. You've got people driving cars, people who have different skill levels around driving. So you can imagine, driving is one of the most complicated things that we actually do. There are all these studies around driving and the fact that you're constantly making these decisions. So when you have different customer segments, some of whom have a lot of experience with cars and have maybe owned a car, and others, we're seeing in younger generations, many people have never owned a car. They know how to drive. I mean, we do eligibility checks and driving checks and all that, of course, before you come into the service. But people's driving skills and experiences are very, very different. So that adds its own complexity. Another component of complexity is just cars, right? Cars are big, expensive assets, and they need to be clean, and they need to be safe, and they need to be parked, and they need, a lot of attention, right? And we want them, to be fresh and new models that people can enjoy. So there's a whole slew of complexity by just simply having cars as part of your service. And then another part of complexity that we face is just cities. We're in all the major cities in the US, Canada, many cities in Europe. Cities are different. We have all sorts of externalities that we have to deal with that our customers are dealing with in the car, whether it's traffic, weather, time, and then we have to deal with the cities themselves, the governments themselves, to place our cars. So just the city and all the externalities and variables that we can't predict add extreme complexity. Then, as we've mentioned, just the different interaction channels that customers use. In our case, it's web, mobile, IVR, call center, car, location, so many, many channels, many, many touch points, most of them self-serve. And then, as a sharing business, the other complexity we have is that our customers are actually part of our operational service system. So when you join the service, you kind of accept a social contract that you'll clean up after yourself when you leave the car. You'll fill the car up with gas if it's out of fuel. We give you the fuel card to do that. You won't smoke in the car. You'll leave it in the spot where you got it for the next guy. And so the fact that we're also relying on our customers as part of our operation adds a lot of complexity as well, because as you know, different people have different values and perceptions around rules. Some people follow the rules, some people don't follow rules, some people like to break rules. So it just adds a lot of complexity. So that just sets the stage for who we are, our guiding principles around experience design, and a lot of the complexity that we face as a business. So now I'm going to go through the 7 steps. And the 7 steps help us to really break down this complexity and be focused on high-impact areas for experience design and getting us to deliver customer delight. So the first one is really get out and observe and be with your customers. So not only use your own product or service, but be with your customers. Watch them use the service. And this isn't asking them about the service, asking them what they like or don't like, but this is physically observing them, watching them, not in a creepy way. Ask them, let them opt into this. So we do a lot of this in that we'll drive with our members. We'll sit in the back seat, tell them that we're not going to say anything during the drive, and we just observe what happens. We watch them have fun. We watch them be confused. We watch them experience anxiety. And so all of this information tells us, okay, where do we need to focus to, make it more fun, keep the fun, design out the anxiety, design in areas that, can mitigate confusion. So observation, I think, is a really, really key step to kind of human-centered design for your experience. And I think because basically people can't, they can't always tell you what they want, but their behaviors will tell you. And a good example is when Henry Ford, after he developed the Model T, he said, well, if I had asked people what they wanted at the time, they would have said faster horses, right? And he developed a car. So it's a good example of how observation is a critical component. Number 2, take what you learn by being with your customers and map the journey. I think, mapping the journey is, at least it's becoming a very valuable tool in our profession. We use it extensively because what it does is it establishes a framework, not only for my team, but for the whole company to understand how we're talking about the steps of the experience. So for us, it's sign up, need, decide, reserve, prepare. And all of those high-level experiences have, very sub-detailed experiences. And so by mapping it out, we have a nice foundation to speak with others throughout the company to say, look, here's where we're going to focus to make improvements or innovate. And when you add data to your mapping, that really, really helps you as an organization to figure out, okay, where should we focus our attention and resources? What's going to have the biggest impact? So map it, add your data. We collect a lot of data. Add data along the journey and start to dissect it to figure out what are the problems or opportunities you're going to focus on so that you can delight your customers. And then once you know where you're focusing, don't just jump into tactical solutions. I think we all have a tendency to want to say, okay, here's the problem, here are the solutions. What we like to do is take a break and get a cross-functional team together so that we remove all the constraints, basically, and say, okay, if we were designing the ultimate solution or the ultimate experience, what would that look like? And let yourselves do that. Let yourselves look at parallels, things outside of your company to get ideas. And use paper and stickies and not technology, just very simple stuff to envision what an ideal would look like. And then you can start to backcast and say, okay, here's a good, better, best solutions. And then you can start to apply your constraints and pick which one you're going to go with based on your own constraints. So allowing yourself to envision ideals and conceptualize, I believe, will enable you to deliver more delight. And then design experiences, not silos or feature silos. What we try to do is, rather than saying, for example, with our mobile applications, the original intent was, okay, let's develop mobile applications so that people can reserve anywhere, anytime. And that sounds great, and that makes a lot of sense. But again, when we looked back at our map and looked at the experience and said, how can we make that even richer with the first iteration of our applications, we said, okay, well, people often need help when they're trying to find the car. And we knew that the wow moment, one of the wow moments we have is when people actually open this car that's not their own, no one's around. It's kind of like they feel like they're stealing a car or something. They're so excited that the car opens and they get in and drive away. So we said, okay, how can we actually strengthen that wow moment? And so in our first iteration of the applications, we developed the ability to honk the car horn, flash the lights so that it helps you to find the car, and then locking and unlocking with your device as another kind of wow moment. So really looking at how do you develop an experience versus one particular feature. And then add high-touch elements. So again, as a self-serve business, most of our interactions are digital. But I think a really, really important foundational element to us at Zipcar is where we can add high-touch elements. Kind of go old school, thank you letters, things like that. And this is an example of a Zipcar Loves campaign that we kicked off in around Valentine's Day, where the last car you used, which has a name, is basically, sending you thank yous for using it. The car, Alpha Audi sends you a card on Valentine's Day just saying, thank you for using, Zipcar. The cars were sending out flowers and chocolates around this time. So, it's very, very high touch, but again, doing it within the context of the brand and the image that we're trying to convey. And I think the other cool thing about high-touch elements is that employees love doing it. The employees were the ones who sat down and wrote out the cards and all that, and it makes people feel good about what they're delivering if they have an opportunity to thank the best customers. Whoops. Then number 6 is design employee experiences. As we know, people make it happen, right? And even in a self-serve business, there's a lot of people working underneath all of that to make it happen. And so this is an example of an employee experience that we take very seriously and try to design. Number 1, so that employees are, like their jobs, they're having fun, and they have the tools they need to be successful to deliver what you want them to deliver to your customers. So this is an image of a call center agent and the tools that they're using. And so we, again, will observe and film our call center agents and look at how, they're interacting with the technology to find information to help resolve a problem. So they've got someone, you can see this guy is someone on the phone, and we're watching how easy is it for them to solve a particular problem. And then how can we make the interface much easier? How can we get them the information they need easier, faster, quicker to solve the problem in an exceptional way and feel empowered to solve the problem and reduce, the anxiety of their own job. A call center, folks, there's a lot of anxiety there. So really looking, again, not only think about your customers, but designing employee experiences, especially related to those that are, frontline employees, is a critical element to delivering delight. And then number 7 is designing service and recovery. Again, as I mentioned, Zipcar is very self-service, but we do have things that go wrong, right? And so this is a good example. By the way, everyone was fine. No one was hurt in this particular situation. But what we've done is, because we're dealing with cars, and cars naturally, and people and all that, there can naturally be incidents. The teams are, we've spent the time to design service recovery processes. So in this case, the situation happens, the local team knows immediately how to react. The local team goes out, brings an extra Zipcar, brings cold water and snacks for the people on the duck boat because it's a hot summer day, bring another car for the bride, and have a Zipcar employee take the bride to Boston Common to actually get married. She was, in fact, going to get married. So again, by thinking about what can go wrong and designing, a great recovery experience, that's when you can really, really build promoters and delight. I mean, there's something, I think, maybe you've heard of the service recovery paradox, where if you recover really, really well, people are 10 times more likely to become promoters versus if nothing had ever happened and they were just going about their day using your service without anything happening. So service processes and recovery are critical to our steps. So those are the 7 steps. And then I'm just going to go through a quick example that doesn't, I won't go through all the steps, but that has some of those steps kind of in action. And what it was is we noticed that we were having high call volume of people calling and saying, I can't find the car that I reserved, okay? So we dug into that, right? So we used data to guide us, and through our observations, we're able to come up with some reasons, why around preparation and pickup. And went out into the field across a variety of cities and watched people from that point of, reserving a car to going to walking to the car location and finding the car and getting in the car. So just focusing on this little micro experience. Because again, it's a moment of truth, right? If I can't find my car, I can't go on the trip. Can't accomplish what I want to accomplish using our service. So we, did extensive observations and saw how people consume information differently. We saw, how they were using the information that we had already provided to get them to their car. You know, you see different decision-making styles among people, and you know, just really came to some interesting conclusions, not only about the information that we had to provide to them directly, but also around the location. We realized that actually our locations, some of our locations were part of the problem, in that they weren't properly, there weren't enough signs or cues to guide people into a location. Sometimes our cars are located, in a garage, for example. So we also dug in at the employee level and met with our fleet operations team and said, tell us about how are you selecting locations? And we learned, obviously, that they were very operations focused in the way that they select locations. They just get the directive that, well, we need to place 5 more cars in this zone of Manhattan, and this place is available. Okay, fine, check. And so what we learned was that our operations team needed more of a customer focus in selecting a location, and so we worked very closely with them to develop a checklist of here are the things you need to be thinking about from a customer standpoint when you pick a location, to make it easy for people to get there, to make the location enjoyable. Everything from being able to put signage in certain places outside the garage, to lighting, being able to put stencils on the ground, visual arrows, things like that. So by working with the employees and talking to the employees, we were able to really impact the experience. And then, it culminated with, again, designing and developing an experience, not a silo. And so we focused on, improved location selection and signage and visual cues with our operations team. And then on the applications, added visual cues, photographs of every point, where you would be approaching to get your car from the outside of the garage to the inside of the garage and to the car itself. So really making sure that people had access to that information, with them on their smartphone as they were actually trying to get to the car. And basically, I think what we're trying to do is exceed expectations and try to be a couple steps ahead of our customers, so that they're saying, wow, Zipcar really thinks of everything. That's really what we're striving for from a delight standpoint. So recap of the 7 steps: observe and be with your customers, map the journey, add data and dissect, envision and conceptualize ideals, design experiences, not silos, add high-touch elements, design employee experiences, and design service and recovery, and keep doing it over again. So thank you. I appreciate it, and hope you got something valuable out of this.
Okay. Oh, questions. Okay, good. Good.
Any questions?
Thank you. In the service and delivery that you mentioned, did you train your associates to bring that extra water, or is that something that they were empowered and they just knew to do?
Yeah, it's kind of a combination. It's definitely starting with empowerment, so not, and so that's definitely a cultural area, and we worked a lot on that because I don't think we were always, I don't think at that frontline level people were always empowered, and so we made a conscious effort to say, you know what, when something goes wrong, you are empowered to make a decision and do what you need to do. So in that case, it was really pure empowerment. They weren't waiting to ask, their manager or whatever. They just made the decisions and got out there, and they were empowered to do so.
Any other questions?
This one in the back.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Can you give me some sense of how big your team is working on this?
How what is working?
How big the team is working on customer experience?
So I have a team of 12 folks that are located in Cambridge, and then a couple in the UK. So we're focused on experience design, and then we also work very closely as partners with our engineering staff. And so that's about 40 engineers.
As you went to make enhancements on the different aspects of the delivery service or the experience, did you see yourself having to deal with internal sell-in and building that business case of this is going to cost us X amount more money, but here will be the benefit from a customer standpoint? And how did you get the investments that you needed to actually deliver on your vision of what the customer experience might be?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, definitely we do have a process in place to look at business case, and but we don't start with the business case. And again, I think that's we've had the benefit of having a company that's focused on member experience early on, and a CEO and leadership team that bought into that early on. So, which I think has been very, very critical to our success. So people are willing to first listen to what's broken or what are the opportunities around the experience, and then before we make a decision on what to do, dig into the business case, look at what it's going to take to innovate or design that out, and what we think the return is, and of course continue to test and measure. We do try to work in a pretty agile way, so we're trying to make small enhancements but very frequently, and continually trying to measure the impact of those and feedback to people. I think that's what also helps if you're very open and transparent, not only upfront with the business case and what you're trying to do, but if you're open and transparent with measurement and how what's happening as a result of what you've implemented and sharing that broadly, then you tend to get more buy-in for the next thing.
Lesley, thank you. From a mapping the journey perspective, do you have your own in-house tools for that journey mapping? Or are you using a software package? What I've been finding is we're looking for tools where we need not necessarily the $1 million solution, but something that we can use practically every day. Yeah. So really curious on what you have deployed.
Yeah, it's really, we don't use an external tool. It's largely just internal tools, and again, it's a good point, because you can go to a very extreme level of detail or a higher level of detail, but it's basically internal tools that we've used, and frankly, it works pretty well. She doesn't need a mic. Exactly. So again, what we have is a service system map, right? Where at the top level is the employee experience. I mean, sorry, the customer experience, and then underneath we have all of those operational processes that are supporting that. So what's happening, with fleet maintenance, or what's happening with customer service. So it does become, a large service system map. But again, what we try to do is, apply data to see, where are the real pain points, and then focus in on those particular areas to start to detail out or, unpack what's happening underneath, rather than saying, okay, we're going to map the whole thing, because you could spend, a lot of time just mapping and not doing anything. So we try to, keep it at a pretty high level and try to, get some beacons with regards to data and feedback that we're hearing from customers, to then dive deeper and really detail out certain aspects of the experience to make some decisions.
Can you talk about, sorry, I'm over here. Can you talk about the first step of the observing and being with customers, and how you first went about doing that, how frequently you do it, and specifically, how are you reaching out to the customers to make sure that that happens? Sure.
And this is something that companies like Intuit have done. So we had definitely heard of other companies that were doing it and thought, that made a lot of sense for us. What we do is, first of all, it's around a particular area that we know we want to either improve or innovate upon. So we're selecting an area. So one example is the drive experience, the time that people spend in the car. It's obviously critical to, you know, the success of your experience with us, and so we said, okay, we really want to understand that period of time. And so we are fortunate enough to have customers who, you know, they'll respond to driving credit. So we provide an incentive. We reach out to customers. You know, we use our data to say, okay, let's make sure we're covering different segments of customers in this research, and then reach out to people with some sort of incentive to say, you know, will you either let us go on a drive with you, or unattended observation. We use cameras as well, so where, you know, we adhere a camera to the dashboard and there are no people, and also in-home interviews. And typically we like to do a combination of those things, but it's basically incentivizing, you know, people to participate. And then we typically do that, you know, over a couple of cities, try to get a good sample as well geographically. And we also engage other people in the company. So it's not just our, this is kind of important, I think, to making all of it successful. It's not just our team that's going out and doing it. We always invite and try to get people from other functions to participate. And that's been hugely valuable in that, you know, when you have the COO driving in the car with someone, or when you have someone who's, you know, typically on the phone with customers, or an operations person, it's very, very enlightening, and then it becomes much easier to get everyone behind improving the customer experience, because they're, you know, in this, you know, they're in the customer's environment, if you will. So we largely do it with incentives, and find that people are very willing to participate.
Continuing on with step one, could you speak to how you observe or be with customers with automated systems like your IVR or your web?
Yeah, we do a few different things. So with IVR, we use, you know, quite a bit of pathing analysis, first of all, to look at, you know, where are people coming in and where are they going, and then we also we have the capability to listen to calls, so we can then map backwards and figure out where they came in on the IVR. And then also we'll do a lot of like alpha testing as well with employees. Employees tend to use the service quite a bit, and so we'll even use our own employees with alpha testing. With web and mobile, we do a variety of heat mapping and tracking, click tracking, things like that. But we'll also do it in conjunction with observations. So for example, last week we were looking at some new UI options for our mobile apps. And so we created prototypes, really simple prototypes that members could drive off the phone, but it was just, you know, drawings. And we recorded them so that a group of people in another room could be watching as this person tried to interact with these prototypes. So we're kind of measuring, but also, you know, observing at the same time using a variety of tools.
I think you may have addressed part of the question that I have for you. Would you articulate the programs that you have post-design? How do you ascertain that your customers actually experience what you've designed?
Well, we use a variety of measurements. Number one, if we implement something like, for example, a new experience with our iPhone app, for example, we'll proactively go back and do additional usability after the fact to get an understanding of, you know, how well is it performing in their eyes. And again, where might it need to be improved? I mean, we all want to be perfect at first, but we understand that, you know, there's a lot of iteration to do. So we will go back after we've introduced something and measure it and get people back in from a usability standpoint to see how it's performing. We use a variety of data metrics. We use quality scores, Net Promoter, things like that, to then measure, you know, the overall experience and get a pulse on what's working and what's not along some of these critical touch points. So it's kind of a combination of a variety of feedback mechanisms.
Hi. When you're doing all this work with the mapping and capturing data, how are you factoring in the different user case scenarios? Because I would imagine a kind of first-time user or infrequent user would have a very different experience from a high-frequency user.
Yeah, that's a great question, and we definitely try to do that, and you're absolutely right. So we do use different types of segmentation: behavioral segmentation, usage segmentation, trip type segmentation. And so we will try, and then we have different customer segments like consumer, business, university as well. So again, it kind of comes back to data. We have a pretty strong, analytics function that looks at different cohorts of people and what happens over time. And so we will try, if we're doing some sort of research on something new, we'll try to look at, okay, here are people who are prospects, or maybe even people who, people who are prospects, they're not even members, and then people who maybe have joined and, they've used the service once, and then people who are maybe more established members. And so we will look at the, the spectrum of segments to understand, the different value perceptions and needs that they have, and try to design, because to your point, a new member, there are a lot more things that we can do to we want to make that first trip very successful, and we want to make joining very successful. And again, the fact that you have the map that says, need, decide, join in the beginning enables us to, okay, let's focus in on this area. It may not apply to everyone because it's really focused on the people just coming into the network, but let's focus on this area so that, we get great promoters kind of out of the gate.
So maybe this is a little futuristic question. As you expand yourself, maybe exponentially, how do you make sure that the nimble-footedness which is there maybe as a size which you are today continues as you grow?
The size of the company or my team?
Both.
Both, yeah. I think it's all about, again, just trying to, because we're expanding globally and things like that. And so, trying to make sure that we do have people who are looking at, as we expand, who are looking at any nuances, for example. We have customers now in London and Spain and other places. And so, that's why we try to grow and make sure that we have people who are at least feeding in any nuances that we need to understand from a global perspective on improving the experience.
Hello. So for your welcome journey, I was just wondering, do you have any staggered approaches to your welcome journey? Do you have any idea of value when that first customer comes in, any kind of propensity modeling, or does everyone get the great experience?
Oh, I didn't hear the beginning, actually.
Sorry. I'm just wondering whether you have different levels of welcome journey for that first experience with Zipcar, or does everyone just get a great experience, or do you have an idea of value?
Yeah, I mean, we do. We look, again, we use data quite a bit and look at different segments and analyze, how people use the service over time, and analyze, different profiles of people, and there are different user types. There are people who use the service occasionally, and maybe they have a car in their household, but they've gotten rid of one car, and so they use us periodically. So we do take a look at different segments and how they're using the service, and then where necessary or where possible, we will design the experience differently. But in general, our goal, again, we're not a huge staff and a huge company. We're just really trying to make sure that everyone accomplishes their main goal, which is they want to get somewhere, and they want to do it successfully based on what success is in their own mind, and so that's really our primary focus.